a bipartisan centrist domestic radio that would basically be the equivalent if Mitch McConnell and Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez teamed up to do 9/11 to bring civility back to American politics. That is basically what happens on this show.
Yeah, it's Kevin McCarthy and Senator Ungrateful Bitch.
We are recording.
All right. Before we divulge too many spoilers, let's start the show. It's Thursday, March 6th, and we've got the original gang in the house. Gang. It is me, Felix, and Matt today. And just let's just at the top of the show. This is a classic Chapo limited TV miniseries show. So you know what you're getting here. We are talking about the day to end all days. The special Netflix political thriller miniseries 0 Day,
aka Liberal Decker.
That's exactly what. I don't know where to begin with 0 Day.
I would just say, starting off, that I do want to note that this is the single television show that I have gotten the most individual requests for us to cover on the show. I think more than a dozen individual people have messaged me saying, you guys have to do this. A special shout out to Jake from Time Crisis for first putting me onto this.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks to everyone who recommended that we do an episode about 0 Day, because this is very much like of a piece with the episodes that we've done on like the Aaron Sorkin universe, or a number of like unconscionable liberal jackoff fantasies that have made it into the entertainment industry. But I really have to say that this one is a new level. It is pushing the medium forward in astonishing new ways. So 0 Day is a 6-part miniseries that just premiered on Netflix that is created and written by, or one of the co-writers and co-creators is the former head of NBC News. And what it is essentially like, Chris, you described it as like, what if you took all of the events of like the last 4 years of politics, put it in a blender, and like poured it into a container that was like, this is the reality that should exist had Kamala Harris won the election. And what it is essentially like Robert De Niro plays an ex-president who is sort of called out of retirement to basically be sort of like a Robert Mueller / 9/11 commission head, who's also suffering brain damage. But don't worry, it's not senility. He's just been hit with a Proteus gun.
Yeah. Initially, you think like, he's senile, or he has dementia. His mind is going. But then they introduce Proteus, which is this obvious Havana syndrome stand-in. But the way they talk about Proteus is, I don't know, if the conversation was a bad enough movie to be featured on Mystery Science Theater. There's so many horrific scenes of like De Niro just, and by the way, I admire people who phone it in, but this was too far for me with what De Niro did here. There were scenes where Lizzie Kaplan is trying her hardest, like acting her ass off, and De Niro's just like, fake news is more popular than real news nowadays. And it's like, can you like drink a fucking coffee or something? Can you show any investment? But he goes around and he's like, I'm experiencing attacks from rays. And then some deep state guy will go, you don't even want to know about what Proteus is.
I was thinking, so like I said, this is like, it's liberal jerk off instructions is this show. And like, it is bad in a way that is truly extraordinary. Like the how bad it is matched only by the level of A-list talent that they shanghaied into doing this, which is like, I feel like every moment I'm pointing at the screen going like, it's Matthew Modine. It's Angela Bassett. It's Jesse Plemons. It's Connie Britton from Friday Night Lights.
That's true. It's very, very, very impressive. Matt Damon is on Ozempic, so that's fun.
But like how they were cajoled into doing this is beyond me, because it is truly dreck. But I guess the way I'm going to set this up is like I'm thinking about this in terms of like our Aaron Sorkin series. And Matt, I told you. When I was watching this show, I was really struck by something that you said during our newsroom episode, which is we all remember the conceit of the newsroom, which is like a show about news that happened 2 years ago, but like it taking place in a reality where Keith Olbermann still had a TV show, and Jeff Newsroom could like get the damn story right about whether Gabby Giffords is dead or not.
It's a Proteus.
And I have to kill myself now because Proteus was mentioned. I can't let the secret of Proteus get out.
But the point you made about like the problem with the central sort of dramatic conceit of the newsroom is that it offered liberals a glimpse of like how things could have been different if we had an honest, decent media that could stand up for the truth. But the problem is that it's still recounting real events as they actually happened and transpired. So it essentially is still portraying a world in which you can change nothing, even if you had Jeff Newsroom, giving you the news. That being said, I think Zero Day, the miniseries, represents a bold new paradigm shift in liberal wish fulfillment fantasies. Because what this show is essentially, it's as interesting as watching CNN or MSNBC, but it's all make-believe. It's all fantasy. And I think in this era where cable news networks like CNN and MSNBC are losing viewers, less and less people are watching. The average age of the people watching is like 95 years old or something like that. I think the cable networks need to like take this as an example of what they should be doing, which is not covering the news. It's creating a TV show that looks like the news, but that shows people what they want to see.
Well, yeah, we've long recommended something like this. Basically, something similar to my, indulging the fantasies of crazy people governmental department, that there would be a parallel fake politics that is run sort of like Love Island for America's stupids, which occupies 250 million people. But what's so interesting here is the liberal fantasy is a version of the sledgehammer trial from Turkey, but done by Joe Biden. Yeah. That's really and it would be a secularist. I mean, it would be, sledgehammer if it was pro-secularist, if they were taking out the anti-woke religious people, which I think liberals do need to embrace Kemalism. I think they're halfway there already.
And like I said, the fact that this was co-created and co-written by the former head of NBC News is like, as we'll discuss, like the plot of this show, I won't say it's shocking, but it is revealing to consider that like there are numerous parts of the show that are so stridently authoritarian and terrifying, but presented, but they're all presented as like, this is what we want: an honorable bipartisan president raping and torturing Tucker Carlson to death. So hard to know where to begin with this show. I'll just do the best I can to recount how the plot is set in motion. So it begins here, and we see sort of a day in the life of former President Nick Mullen, played by Robert De Niro, and he is an ex-president who's working on a memoir and sort of settled into retirement in a beautiful home in the Hudson Valley. But then, you guys remember the thing with the bird feeder? It begins to suggest maybe he's losing his mind because he's like, oh, the bird feeder's out again. I thought I filled it yesterday.
Yeah, there's a callback to that, which I think is actually the most interesting thing about the wish fulfillment in here. Basically, they're saying Biden wasn't senile. He was in fact being spied on, possibly by his bitch daughter, and being hit with Havana syndrome. That was made by the NSA. That was made by anti-secularists in the NSA.
So his name is George Mullen, but for the purposes of our show, he's ex-president Nick Mullen. And there's also a Russian hacker named Felix in the show as well.
Yeah, but he also went to Dalton, so he's like a composite character. There's probably a director's cut where they're like, and he also spent some time in Cincinnati, but actually was born in Indiana. And he worked for Slate for a brief period. He was in the DSA when it was just him when he was in his 20s. And the only other people there were sort of 89-year-old Jewish guys who were passing non-binding resolutions calling Hugo Chavez a dictator. And his name is Felix Menaker Christman Frost Christopher.
So, like I said, as the show begins, we got Robert De Niro is described by the woman who's helping him ghostwrite his memoir. She says of him, "You were the last bipartisan president." And this is a theme that's referred to over and over again. But here's a question I have for you, Felix and Matt. How long ago to the events portrayed on the show was Robert De Niro president? Was President Nick Mullen in office? Was he a president in the 70s? Or did he just finish his term? I was not clear about this.
It's implied to be about like the general time frame, like between us and the second Bush presidency.
Okay. And I guess his former vice president, played by Angela Bassett, President Mitchell, is in office right now. And basically, we hear from De Niro, like we hear his catchphrase, "Greatness requires greatness."
I just about vomited when I heard this, because it was like, I don't know. I try to keep an open mind about things. I try to like give them my undivided attention, at least at first, before I start, playing whatever game, because you can be surprised. But when I heard that, yeah, I started freaking out in front of my window, so the NYPD sniper that is constantly pointing a laser at me would finally kill me.
And here's another element of the kind of like the soothing, everything's all right. Shh, it's going to be okay. It was all good. No, you did nothing wrong. The sort of like the liberal JO fantasy here is another thing you have to remember about President Nick Mullen is that he was a one-term president. Now, I can handle a lot. I can handle a lot from political thrillers and the media and the fake news, but trying to make a one-term president the hero of your story, not going to work for me. He's a fucking loser and will always be a loser. And it's very clear. Oh, he didn't seek a second term because his son died. Would that remind you of anything? But it's actually because he fathered a child out of wedlock with his chief of staff.
And by the way, that's the opposite of Joe Biden. If his son never died, Obama would have never put his finger on the scale. They would be like, Joe Biden, get the fuck out of here. We'll just end the country before we let Bernie win the nomination. We'll just do a false flag nuke. But because his son died, they're like, okay, I guess we have to do it for him.
So like these things, the last bipartisan president we've ever had, who's also a one-term president who chose not to seek re-election, but is still highly respected from members of both parties. He's working on a memoir. His ghostwriter visits him in Hudson, New York, and like this is all within like the first 10 minutes of the show. But things begin cooking when, as the ghostwriter is leaving his house, and she's like in a car talking to the publisher, being like, I don't think he's going to turn it in on time. I don't know if he wants to write it anymore. Then we see the GPS go out. The traffic lights go down. And I was like, I wonder if this character is going to be a love interest for De Niro later in the show. Nope. The SUV gets obliterated on the train tracks by just like a freight train hitting it. What has happened, folks? That's right. The 0-day event. I thought it was an EMP attack, but no, it's cyber 9/11. Where like basically at the same time, everyone's phones send them a little message that says this will happen again. As like every single like air traffic control, every electrical and computer system in the country blacks out for like a minute. And as a result of that, like thousands of people die. It's cyber 9/11. The country's been attacked. Our homeland has been cybered.
There's no Baron in sight to help us. Baron Trump does not exist in this universe. He cannot help us with cyber.
And then we begin to see like, the nation's government sort of spring into action. And then like, they create a commission, and like the funniest thing here is like they create a commission that's like an emergency powers commission, of which like the head of which will receive basically unlimited authority to investigate cyber 9/11, and they give De Niro that role. And by the end of the first episode, it begins to become clear that De Niro is suffering from some sort of cognitive decline, and I was like, oh, they're trying to make it realistic. Rest assured, it is not his fault. He has been Havana syndrome. And also, like, but it's not clear who did that to him. The show never actually really answers that question. They leave it sort of ambiguous. But this is what I mean about the shockingly authoritarian worldview of this TV series. Is that in the world of this show, the country experiences a terrorist attack and sets up some sort of like an emergency commission to investigate it. That is imbued with powers that are just flagrantly unconstitutional. Like they don't need a warrant to search anything. They can arrest anyone, hold them without a charge. They can shred every civil liberty imaginable to get to the bottom of this crime. And the message of the show is a bipartisan ex-president suffering brain damage is the perfect person to be given these powers to. We got to talk about the scene where in the first episode where De Niro He's like, I don't like to do public appearances anymore. I'm simply too honorable for that. And then Jesse Plemons, another A-list name, is like his sort of body man, not really a chief of staff. He's just his sort of like replacement son for the one who died. He's like, you gotta come down to Manhattan, gotta show up and like press the flesh with some first responders. And there's like, a subway crash as part of the terror attack because, like the switching signals get all scrambled or whatever. Actually, that's the one thing that I think wouldn't have been affected by 0 Day because I'm not sure if the show's aware that the New York City subway systems are not digital. they're still run on mercury switches and like a big board filled with like Christmas lights and shit like that.
A bunch of Irish guys flipping switches 20 stories under Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly. But like there's a crowd of people. And De Niro, President Nick Mullen, confronts a sort of like QAnon conspiracy guy who's like, there are no bodies down there. They're all crisis actors. And then we get the first of one of De Niro's many, many completely half-assed and phoned in inspirational monologues where he's like, sir, you're helping. You're not helping. These working men and women, they're the ones that are helping. And you're falling for this conspiracy bullshit. You're un-American. You're not helping. And everyone cheers and claps. And then they're like, hey,
oops, I crapped my pants.
Yeah, that is like something that I not just hate about this show, but I hate about sort of like liberal interpretations of this cultural moment. Do you guys remember that show that that Jordan Klepper guy from the Neo Daily Show did?
Yeah.
Where he was pretending to be like Alex Jones or some shit. I love bad comedy programming. And I watched the show and it was so interesting because he's pretending to be Alex Jones, and it's already like it's one of those parodies that's like easy to get like a cheap laugh out of because Alex Jones is so ridiculous, but hard to really like get something really substantial or interesting out of. Because while he is so ridiculous, that makes any satire or any like new interpretations of it so difficult unless you're, like Conor O'Malley or someone like that, someone who has like a unique insight on the origins and the mechanics of this type of thinking. But it was so interesting because he did it in this way where he still has his like same annoying Daily Show guy delivery. So he'll say something like, in other news, it turns out that math is a terrorist plot. And it's like, yeah, that's what Alex Jones sounds like. And
failed of commitment.
Yeah. There's like, it's absent any like performance. Alex Jones is a great performer. He got to where he is because he is one of the great broadcasters of our time. Similarly, when they portray like right-wing cranks in this show, they, everyone in this country is becoming the same. It's sort of similar to Mallard Fillmore depicting liberals, where they don't talk about any of the actual things that these guys in real life talk about. The absent is anything about like immigration or like any real like psychotic racial invective or, psychosexual focus on like bathrooms or like Adam Schiff raped a toddler and Anthony Bourdain watched and killed himself with a poisoned appetizer. The true like insanity and bloodlust and uniquely American aspects are completely absent. So they're just these cardboard cutouts that walk around saying things like, I love it when news is made up. I think the sky is fake. Oh, the sunset? I think the sun is a big gay guy. And so they're these tomato cans that are walking around waiting to be deflated by this amazing liberal newsman or president or whatever character your thing is centered around. And they do that here when they introduce this guy who's like, I think the tunnel isn't real. Every time, when you go to the store, I think that all the women who don't smile back at me are actors. And Robert De Niro's like, why don't you read an encyclopedia for once? Let's work together. So they do a Tucker Carlson character who again, no performance, no racial
played by Dan Stevens.
Played by Dan Stevens, who, again, sounds like Jordan Klepper. And in his show, he doesn't, there's no immigration stuff, none of the actual right-wing topics. And he literally says the phrase, all right, truthers, let's keep truthing. in real life, if all of this happened in real life, this fake Tucker Carlson would not need to be abducted by Joe Biden, Robert Mueller, to be sexually assaulted, because he would be sexually assaulted by millions of Americans before his first broadcast ended for saying that.
I also, Amber pointed this out, and I also love like the portrayal of the Tucker Carlson character. And it's clear like the former NBC News guy that created this show, this is like a thinly veiled revenge fantasy against Tucker Carlson and like the online media for just like ruining his job and taking his viewers away from him. But like they constantly talk about him that he's a dangerous ideologue, and then in the next sentence they'll be like, he's also a complete opportunist and cynic who doesn't believe in anything.
And whoever introduced these people to the word grifter, you should fucking kill yourself. The worst thing anyone could ever do is not believe the things they say.
And here's another thing. Felix, you bring up a really good point about how the way this show portrays its right-wing demagogue character. I found it to be like almost, except for like one scene in like the 5th episode where like he's like racist to the guy who's torturing him in a black site.
Which is bad. You know, he's racially sensitive to your enhanced interrogator.
Yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, he's let's say he has reason to feel rage mode about the guy currently putting a plastic bag over his head. But like I found like on all of the Tucker Carlson characters' broadcasts, it was like you're totally right, Felix, that it was like devoid of any actual right-wing political beliefs. And it seems like the Tucker Carlson broadcaster played by Dan Stevens, the only thing he talks about on his show or his only political belief is that President Nick Mullen is a scared old man.
This guy who was president like 15 or 20 years ago. Like, can you imagine if that's what Tucker Carlson's show was like?
Yeah, he was like, yeah. Jimmy Carter? Where is he? We haven't seen him. Fact is, he's old. He's old and weak and probably pissing his pants right now. Will it get on you? Who knows?
Tucker Carlson doing 100 episodes in a row in like 2010. Let's go to Gerald Ford's house and kill him. It's the highest rated show on TV. They can't get enough of this. They all hate Gerald Ford.
And it's just like, it seems like the characters on this show that are supposed to be political, and like all of the people who play politicians on the show, it's like it's never really like Matthew Modine's supposed to be the Speaker of the House, and it's pretty clear he's a Republican. And Lizzie Kaplan plays Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who's also President Mullen's daughter. It's pretty clear who's supposed to be a Republican or a Democrat. But like those words are never spoken on the show. Like you never hear the term Democrat or Republican or Democratic president or Republican Speaker of the House. But they just represent the normal politics. And then there's like the wacko, crazy, evil politics. And the tagline for the show that they used to advertise it is "The truth has been weaponized."
Fuck off.
Like a phrase of such nonsense. Like it's just such a meaningless phrase.
From the minds that brought you as a Cold War kid.
Felix, I was dying over that.
That's awesome.
Sorkin was born in 1975. Which means
she was probably not able to talk until she was 15, and she's going to act like she was following the SALT negotiations. By the time you were reading, the party was long over, lady.
I had someone like complaining to me that like it's technically correct. She was born during the Cold War, and I was like, if a phrase can apply to every American born between 1948 and like I don't know 1991. Generously, it's like you might as well say I'm a planet Earth kid. It's just like it's such a meaningless phrase.
Yeah, I thought as the child of middle class parents was like the best one, and it could never be topped.
Yeah.
It's like the greatest meaningless as a phrase. But Cold War kid is awesome because it's like, yeah, just me and like I don't know 80% of the people that are alive. Like,
and it's like if you were alive during the Cuban Missile Crisis and like duck and cover drills, like I think that would be like a better descriptor of saying my childhood was largely shaped by popular perceptions of what the Cold War was. But like when you're like 10 years old in 1985, like come on, like it doesn't pack the same punch.
It's like if I said, yeah, I got radicalized during the NATO intervention in Serbia.
No, but the thing I wanted to say is that, like, in the Dan Stevens Tucker Carlson character, I thought the show was very studious in making it, like a horseshoe theory thing where it was like they were trying to like intentionally fudge the difference between having left-wing politics and right-wing politics. And it was just like, they're all just mad at the decent, honorable people like President Nick Mullen.
Yeah, I guess that really is it, because Nick Mullen's first, when he starts pulling on the thread a little bit, and he gets, he's getting like the planted like false flag of centrist Gladio. They initially think it was left-wing extremists, and Tucker defends them, which he would not do in real life. But I get that is a good point. They were probably trying to draw that equivalence. I don't have any principles. I would have acted on the show as myself. I would have let De Niro like sexually torture me. I would have been like, "You're a fascist pig. We should abolish the police. And I think that class comes before race, always." Then he puts a bag over my head and shoves a Constitution up my asshole. And I'm like, "Okay, I'm sorry. I'm a bad guy. I'll give it up. I've never had sex."
Yeah, if only Connie Britton was doing that to you, Felix.
That's a punishment? Just going to stimulate my prostate with a Bill of Rights? Can we get the Articles of Confederation in there? If it's Connie Britton, Mrs. Coach, most beautiful woman of all time.
I gotta say, another thing that really pissed me off about like the first episode of this show, which it does feature heavily the portrayal of a life of an ex-president. I am so like De Niro's character on this show, whenever like in pretty much every scene, is wearing his stupid POTUS jacket that like he still gets to walk around when he goes outside, or like gets in one of his like chauffeured cars to be like escorted around. He's wearing his POTUS jacket and like POTUS merch that you get when you're president, and then like has a staff where everyone calls him Sir and Mr. President. Not only do I think ex-presidents should not get Secret Service protection, the idea that everyone has to keep calling you Mr. President until you die is repulsive to me.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that is probably realistic. Like,
I know it's realistic. I'm against it, is what I'm saying.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jimmy Carter is the only guy I could see being like, "You don't have to call me that. I'm burning all my president shirts." But like, all of that. Can you imagine what George H.W. was like? He was probably torturing people with that.
Another aspect of the show, like I said, is like Jesse Plemons. Like I said, Jesse Plemons plays his sort of a body man, his guy Friday. I don't know how you describe it, but like he's a loyal ex-aide to the president who's also having sex with his daughter, who is the most thinly veiled analog for AOC that I've ever seen, played by Lizzie Kaplan. The interactions between Jesse Plemons and Lizzie Kaplan and their sort of like DC political romance, Felix, I think you should sue them for plagiarizing Push Pull, because like there's a scene where they're like, "So are you staying over for the night?" And then like Lizzie Kaplan's like, "You may advise, but I may not consent." And then they're like, "Can we table this for a further resolution?"
And they fucked.
It is so much like Push Pull. It's insane. I should check if I don't know, if I got hit with Proteus and I wrote this movie and don't realize it. I may be owed a payment. Two of the most beautiful and wonderful women of TV of all time are in this show. Connie Britton, Mrs. Coach, and Lizzie Kaplan. Lizzie Kaplan, one of the greatest of all time. And
party down.
They defame her and dishonor me as a viewer by making her repeatedly have sex with an Ozempified Jesse Plemons, who looks really scary.
Terrifying.
Right now that he's skinny. Looks like a really scary guy. Like, when he was Todd, I thought he was amazing as Todd in Breaking Bad. I love him as an actor. But there was like sort of a familiarity in he's not fat. He just has a big old head. But now that he's Ozempified, it's like, "Oh, you must do Todd stuff in real life if you look like that."
Careful, Felix. Let's not be too hard on people who are slightly overweight and have large heads. Okay.
No, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying that having I have such a big. I bought the biggest helmet you can buy for my Chinese Air Force helmet after I got fat 2 years ago, and I tried putting it on, and obviously I couldn't. And I was like, okay, well, this will be like a fun thing that I can wear once I lose all the weight. And then I did, and I can't get it past my fucking temples. I'm never joining the Chinese Air Force because of how big my head is, and because I'm not Chinese and don't know math and can't see well.
But like, I think in the Lizzie Kaplan character, like I said, the thinnest one removed from AOC. Her name on the show is Alexandra. Okay, they're not even trying that hard. But like, definite like the boomer mind poison on this show is very strong because like they reduce like a political disagreement between a young liberal congresswoman and a former president to just be like, she's his fucking bitch daughter who's just doesn't like him because he, made her come home from high school. He got mad at her for breaking curfew one night, and it's just like this familial psychodrama between the president, ex-president, and his daughter is like I think they map over like it's just like this show is the answer for like liberals like who watch this show or who this show is designed for to just be like, how could this happen or how could it have happened differently? And I think their answer for like why AOC, who by the way supported Biden more than almost anyone else in the Democratic Party,
AOC would never do centrist Gladio. She would kill herself with a Tonto before subjecting Joe Biden to Proteus.
And I just think that they're like the political disagreements young people have with Joe Biden are because they hate their parents and are ungrateful. And that's basically the plot of this show. It's basically what happens.
Yeah, and there is also this implied thing that she like does resent him for the death of the son who overdosed. But it's also like the show is heavily, on the side of like, well, that's like unreasonable. He had to be president.
I thought when as soon as the dead son was introduced, I thought it's got to be a military thing. It's got to be a hero. No, it turns out he OD'd. But on the scene where it's a flashback where De Niro is like walks into his son's drug den and finds his dead body, and he's got like a needle in his arm. It had one of my favorite TV tropes whenever they're trying to show how scary and awful drugs are. Is that like it would be one thing if he's dead, overdosed, still got the belt around his arm and the needle spiking the vein or whatever. But it can't stop there. It also has to show, I don't know if you caught this, like on the floor next to his dead body, like every other kind of drug, including marijuana joints and pills.
I love that's such a good TV trope where it's like, all right, just another Tuesday, time to do heroin, meth, cocaine, DMT, weed, all of
just
them. They're
a joint to even myself out, Yeah.
It's amazing he lived that long. He had to have serotonin syndrome like every day of his life.
There's a flashback scene that shows De Niro as the president walking in on his son that does the thing where it's like all in silence and you see them arguing where there's like a sad song playing over it. And it made me really think of the actor who gets the casting notice that's like, all right, we need you for 2 hours one day to tie this rubber thing around your hand and have Robert De Niro yell at you, but you're not saying anything. You're just reacting to De Niro yelling at you in silence.
I could do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, so De Niro is made basically like the Robespierre of America. He's like given godlike dictatorial authority over every man, woman, and child, and begins to use it aggressively by like rounding up dissidents, rounding up left-wing dissidents running server farms in Idaho on like a disused farm or something. But like, okay, when I really started to just like, I really just started to do the Arsenio whoop, 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 whoop. I started doing that when the show introduced the concept of a left-wing hacker collective called the Reapers, who are initially dinged with doing the terror attack. A left-wing hacktivist collective, far-left hacktivists who go by the Reapers. And once again, as I always return to on this show, Kurt Sutter is owed royalties from this. If you bring up Reaper Gang, you gotta let the Sons of Anarchy.
Bastards Reapers.
I was just thinking about Bastard Executioner the other day. Do you remember, like, everyone hated it, and after 4 episodes, Kurt Sutter was like, all right, I fucked up. It's not that good. We'll end it. He's awesome. He's such a good person. I love him. He would never make this show, but if he did, and people were like, this sucks, he'd be like, all right, I'm sorry. I'll do a show about how Tucker's good.
I'm trying to think of the Kurt Sutter version of Zero Day, where it's like the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez character is just like, you don't understand, Dad. I made all these moves to get America out of the gun running business.
Yeah, it's like a 30-step plan where she has to blow up the Statue of Liberty. She kills the brother and then frames the Chinese for it, who turn around and like frame the Bloods. She engineers a school shooting.
America had a good thing going with our porn studio, but you ruined it, Dad.
Yeah,
you ruined it with another war.
Also, like George Mullen would be played by Kurt Sutter, and he would just be getting.
He would arrest himself and torture himself in prison.
Yeah, first episode, he's like, "All right, you have to take me to Gitmo and shove a Quran down my urethra so I understand what it's like."
Oh man! Other characters on this show include Bill Camp as the head of the CIA, and Gabby Hoffman. We got to talk about Gabby Hoffman's character, who is revealed by the 6th episode to be like one of the masterminds behind this plot. But like her character is, how shall I describe this? Basically, a cross between Mark Zuckerberg and Jeffrey Epstein. But she's on screen on this show a total of probably 5 minutes. Like when it's revealed that like she's behind the 0-day attack, I'm like, who is this character again? What? Like it's just so unsatisfying.
She's a pretty like bullshit non-character. Also, like I guess she's kind of like an evil Kara Swisher. Like if Kara Swisher was evil, not just like credulous. But I loved after she kills herself in Holding when Matthew Modine, old Kevin McCarthy goes. Because Alex, the daughter, is like, this has gotten out of hand. Nothing, like everything's gone wrong because of how smart my dad is. And Matthew Modine goes, "You're crying over the death of an autistic sociopath." I love that. I was like, this guy should be president. Fuck George Mullen. This guy's awesome. He would really end wokeness.
So like, and this is long after they've already falsely arrested Tucker Carlson and tortured him at a black site. And it's just like, I didn't think a show could make me feel sympathetic for Tucker Carlson, but this show actually managed to do it, or at least his fictional analog. Because like, they think they're like, oh, he colluded with one of the 0-day planners, like fucking, or let's black bag him out of his bedroom at like 3 a.m, put a gun to his head and then start suffocating him. But then like he was clearly like, then it's revealed that he was set up by Gabby Hoffman's character, like Epstein Musk.
Yeah, like it never really gets resolved. Like obviously, like people are mad at him because he like abducted and tortured Tucker Carlson, but they're never like, oh, like it was bad that we did that. They're like, well, at least we got to like assault him. At least we got to scare his family.
To teach him a goddamn lesson about respecting the news. I saw one thing in my notes here that I thought was hilarious. When they arrest like one of the Reapers, one of the Reaper gang, and then they're like, you've said some pretty, they're like have him in a holding cell, and they're like, you've made some pretty extreme posts online, and he's like, and he says, freedom of speech means the right to say something that other people don't want to hear. Then they're like, wait a second, that quote is a tagline from the Dan Stevens Tucker Carlson Hour online fake news broadcast, and they like go to like the website, and then like they're like on Dan Stevens' website they have a quote, and it's attributed to George Orwell, and it says like true freedom of speech is the right to say things other people don't want to hear. And at one point, one of the characters says, while this is on screen, all these scumbags love him. And they're talking about Dan Stevens, but I was laughing imagining they were talking about George Orwell.
Well, I mean, I would agree with that.
I agree with that. Yeah, it's a sure sign of a nitwit is quoting George Orwell.
I did find that I think the most realistic plot device is rolling up a vast domestic terrorist conspiracy from people posting dumb shit on a Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, that is what the Dan Stevens Tucker Carlson show would be called. It would be called like Fake Facts, made up lie hour. Everyone would be like, oh, I love this show where he lies.
Like for the first 5 episodes of the show, De Niro's investigation into this plot, into this conspiracy, into this terror attack, like takes wrong turn after wrong turn because he's losing his mind. Like, cause like, it's weird. Like when I thought the show was depicting him suffering the effects of senility, I was like, they sort of make like losing chunks of time and like reverting back to the past. They make it seem like it's a investigative superpower. Like when Sherlock just sort of like runs through just like free association in his mind or something like that. But no, they couldn't leave it there. And this is what I mean, like the soothing cooing, it's going to be all right. Everything is fine. You were right. I think the main point of this show is to incept the idea in the American public that Biden's cognitive capacity and the lack thereof was the result of a foreign terrorist attack to cook his brain with the Havana syndrome gun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, clearly this show was made for a world where, like, Kamala won after the switch. I guess this was, like, going to exonerate Biden in advance of all those articles that were, like, you know, he kept asking us what order the alphabet goes in. But, yeah, I mean, I will say, to begrudgingly give credit to the show, well, the implication that senility is an investigative superpower is, you know, idiotic to say the best. I thought their depiction of like the experience of senility was at least interesting. I thought that was like the one kind of interesting thing they did, because it sort of reminded me of like the weird light flare effect that they do in Phantom Pain. So it reminded me of something I liked.
Well, you can't fault them for that. That's one thing in the win column here.
It's definitely relatable. I say that. I watch the 0 hour. It's like, what day is it? What? Who are you people? I was like, thank you. Representation. Thank you.
Yeah, because like there's a scene in the first episode where like he's accepted the role as heading up this blue ribbon committee to destroy civil liberties. and he's like addressing the media in like his driveway, and he starts seeing his ghostwriter who's dead, who's been annihilated by a freight train. He starts seeing her in the crowd, and like there's like they spend 2 or 3 episodes where this guy is, because they repeat over and over again that this is the most important job in the country. Like there must be no limits whatsoever on this investigation. We need to get to the bottom of this. But De Niro spends 3 episodes diverting the resources of this commission to send Jesse Plemons to like look at the fucking cadaver of this woman to be like, yeah, she's dead. Let's dig up her coffin. Still dead. Talk to her parents. You're definitely not seeing this woman. She's in the ground, President Mullen. So I wonder what's going on with you right now.
The scene where Plemons like talks to the parents, he's like, "Okay, so you're sure she's dead? Can you describe like how fucked up her body looked?" And the parents literally go, "Why are you doing this?" Like they think he's taunting them. And there are a lot of really funny cadaver scenes unintentionally in this show. Like when they go to Jesse Plemons' funeral and Alex clocks De Niro walking over the casket and like talking to the graveyard manager and being like,
the gravedigger.
Yeah, the gravedigger. And he's like, can you look, I was president. And I have cash on me. Can you just like peek open the coffin? Can I get a look?
Can I just pinch him one time?
I don't remember like how, like if he was fat or not, because I'm senile. I remember him being fat when he first started porking my daughter, but I'm not sure. Can I see him? And he's like, for George Mullen? Of course.
Yeah, we should talk about Jesse Plemons' character. I mean, spoiler alert, he does die. And by die, I mean he is killed by... He's basically killed by the same guys from Michael Clayton that kill, what's his name? Tom Wilkinson.
Yeah.
They give him a heroin overdose and put him in the bathtub. And that's another thing that's never resolved. Like no one was ever brought to justice for that. They're like, well, he did do smack. He did do drugs at one point. So
yeah, who ordered that, by the way?
Yeah, it's not clear. It's really not clear. I mean, I think it's supposed to be like the other sort of Epstein analog in this movie, the hedge fund guy who like leaves the country on his yacht or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's God. There are so many characters in this movie or this show that just dare you to try and remember them.
Yeah,
because the plot there is he's being like extorted by a billionaire to do like insider work against the Mullen investigation.
Oh yeah.
To do question mark to get this billionaire some kind of advantage, and then when he finally grows a spine and says I can't do this, or I refuse to like collude with XYZ foreign power, that they have to OD him. And given how like unceremoniously he's off in like episode 4. It's another thing where it's like, I can't believe Plemons read this whole script and was like, yeah, that's a nice meaty role for me. I'm glad to play that.
Yeah, that's another thing. How did they get anyone involved in this? Like, how did they get Connie Britton, who's in a ton of shit now, or
Joan Allen?
Joan Allen, like so many fucking all-stars. Do you think they were just like excited to do something with De Niro, or like what?
I think it's like we got De Niro attached, and they're like, oh boy, this would be like.
I think
They're gonna meet the Fockers. Who cares? Let it go.
My biggest guess is that the head of NBC guy cashed in all of his liberal clout of doing the news at the highest level possible for 2 decades or whatever to get De Niro on board. And then with De Niro, yeah, everybody else came in.
Oh, I don't think De Niro needed a lot of convincing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think he schmoozes in those news-ish circles. So I think
because Niro like posts videos now where he's like, doing Jeff Newsroom stuff about Donald Trump. Which, to be fair, I was thinking about this while watching the show. Do you guys remember when that guy mailed him a pipe bomb?
Yes. Yeah. That's it. It was so funny because De Niro's been doing these videos since like 2015, since the escalator, where he's like, he's a no good piece of shit punk. If he was in one of my movies like Meet the Fockers, I'd give him the human lie detector test. If he was in Analyze This, I'd prescribe him crazy pills. He's a no good fucker. And I always thought, like, what kind of lame ass would be moved by this? Because, everyone sort of joked about it. I think they were only popular with like boomers and shit. But they were like charming to me. I never held them against him. I think it's funny when a guy's like that, or like Peter Fonda, and it's like, someone should rape Barron. The 2 types of old liberals in Hollywood.
Yeah,
Facelift. Oh man,
that was when he said that and then instantly died. What a talent! I loved him. But anyhow. Yeah, it was like, who would be moved by this? But apparently some guy was like, what? Donald Trump wouldn't be an Analyze That? I'm going to fucking kill you. Calm down.
And then like mailed him a pipe bomb that was literally like chemically and physically incapable of exploding.
Of course, yeah. Do you think like that was always the thing with like the January 6th pipe bomb? It's like, I will give any Trump guy $1 billion and all the materials in the world. I don't think they could make one.
No. So yeah, like I said, like it's hard to describe the plot of this show because like watching an episode of this show feels like watching an hour of cable news, and I don't remember any of it, even though I took notes. But like, there's the revelations about the Proteus program, which was like, the NSA's way to like scramble someone's brains. They're like assuring you the Havana syndrome is totally real. But I think we need to get to like the twist at like around the end of episode 5 of the show is when it like truly became another level of terrible for me.
When they do January 6th against De Niro.
Yeah.
That's in there as well. That was a good one. But I'm talking about the revelation that like his daughter is the one. His daughter and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Kevin McCarthy are, and with like 5 other Congress people, are behind this like domestic Gladio false flag terror attack that killed thousands of people. And like when they begin to try to explain their reasoning behind this, it was like, so like I just want to know like what do they think was going to happen? We're gonna work with the Mark Zuckerberg character to like crash the nation's computers for a minute, kill thousands of people, and then use the powers given to the committee. But like Matthew Modine was like, oh, the plan was that I would be in charge of the committee. We didn't realize the president gets to appoint the person, and I thought it was going to be me. Oops. Guess we shouldn't have killed all those people. But they were like basically like we need to trash the Constitution. We need to like have the extraordinary law enforcement powers of this committee to do what? And it's like it's basically to neutralize the quote the far left and the far right crazies and return to an era of civility and bipartisanship. And like this is what's so weird because like it's obviously like this show is the product of diseased centrist bipartisan lib thinking. But like they make the bad guy like essentially voice their opinion, and I was a little bit of like, did the people who write this show like when Matthew Modine reveals his like grand plan at the end of it, did they want you thinking, he's got some points?
I think that was it. And it's just so weird. Like, the plan also is that after this, like, nationwide terror attacks that no one can identify a perpetrator, and it's scary, and no one can get money out of the bank, and it endangers trust in all institutions and all manners of life, that would actually bring people together. Which is like, is this your first time here? Like, what country, what era in time do you think you're in?
Oh yes, the show does a harrowing job of depicting what will happen when the banks are out of money. Trademark Matthew Brady. Folks, the banks, they're out of money. There's no more money. There's no more money in the banks thanks to 0 day.
This is called predictive programming. They're trying to get you ready for the fact that the banks are out of money, as Matthew Brady's been warning you about.
Impossible to Google.
We've been warning about this. Oh, another of my favorite details from this show is like a feature of this conspiracy, which attacks like the entire digital infrastructure of America by putting a computer virus that spreads through apps to every phone and computer in the country via Bluetooth or some shit like that. Is that the conspirators are like, oh, aha, how do we avoid the sort of like panopticon-like web of digital surveillance that the United States government and its intelligence services have spread out over the entire face of the planet? And they're like, we know, CB radio. And they're like, oh, we can't, they're like, we can't communicate online because of how the NSA will just like scoop up anything. So they're communicating through ham radio. And they're like, oh, let's go to the device that anyone can just listen in on if they have the right frequency.
That is straight up Independence Day.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Like, they're like,
Yeah, I do.
You know, like, what are the communications? Telegram, you know, like Morse code.
Yeah. Passenger pigeon. So like, yeah. They hack the terrorist code by like just finding what radio frequency they're talking on, and like when they're talking on the radio frequency, like they're supposed to be using code or something, but like the code is like, hey, you know that big event that we planned and are perpetrated.
A certain ex-important guy who's also your dad and has a dead son is on to us about the surprise party at the bank.
But like when De Niro like confronts Lizzie Kaplan about this, and it's just like, again, like I'm just trying to imagine the world, the universe building by the creators of this show, where their AOC stand-in would be like, you know what? Kevin McCarthy and Mark Zuckerberg are making some pretty good points about this terrorist attack we should do. And if we pull it off, I'll probably get a committee, sort of a ranking member on the Ways and Means committee or something like that.
Oh, I bet she wishes she did it now.
Yeah,
like the real AOC. You know, it would be funny if in real life she did this and they still give it to Jerry Connolly. They're like, sorry, you're just not ready. Like, we know you did Gladio with us, but it's Jerry Connolly's turn.
Yeah, when the Democrats try to plead their next false flag 9/11, Jerry Connolly will be planning and executing it because it's his time. Okay, he waited his turn to do cyber 9/11. And look, is he the best guy to pull off this massive crime? Probably not, but you know what? We care about, legacy.
Yeah, he's in the planning room with like the two Epsteins, and he's like, "What if we disrupt steamboat traffic? What if we stop ice from coming in from the North Pole and no one can get their ice creams?"
He's like,
J.P. Morgan will have a fit.
To maximize the effect, to maximize the terror and humiliation that we're going to inflict on the country, we're going to make sure to turn off everyone's TV during the finale of MASH.
All right, the first attack will happen in the middle of the Jack Betty show.
But
the communications won't come back on until Amos and Andy. By then it will be too late.
Okay, Felix, and then like in the CB ham radio network where they're communicating, the conspirators are communicating, the code is they talk like Amos and Andy, and they're like, "Show, boss, we got a big event coming."
Jerry Connolly forgets, and he's like, "Our enemies are sharecroppers." They're like, "Sir, we're doing this," and he's like, "Oh, what race are we again? I forgot." Can you change race during chemo?
Look, I'm going to get to the end of the show here, but there's some plot line about how De Niro had a kid with Connie Britton, who's like he's never met, and then like his wife is cool with it because he's like, you need a real chief of staff, the woman you had a kid with, and then she's like, all right, I'm going to bring you back, but no hanky panky, don't have another kid with her.
His wife's awesome. She's like, look, like everyone knows that when your son dies, you want to make another.
Yeah.
But it's also perfectly folded back into how honorable De Niro must be, because the revelation that he had a secret love child with his chief of staff is then said, but that's really why he didn't run again, because he cared about that baby's privacy so much. He knew that if he ran for a second term,
they were like,
it would ruin their life.
At one point, President Angela Bassett is like, when you chose not to run again, I heard the rumors, but I never believed them because I knew that you would never do something like that for your own benefit. But then I remembered, what if it wasn't for your benefit, but the benefit of that child? And it's like, okay, sure.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is, I think, the writer's barely disguised fetish, overused joke at this point, even though the original is very funny. Writers barely disguised transgression in his own marriage. Now that's a good one.
And like, if you're the secret love child of an ex-president, I'd like to know who my father is. I'd like to have a father in my life, period. But if you were the ex-president, I'd be like, damn, I could be getting like free trips to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, the Super Bowl. I mean, what the fuck? I've been like, think of all the great birthday presents he's skated out on.
That kid is going to get left one POTUS windbreaker that smells like mothballs when he dies.
He could have been backstage with Barney and Baby Bop, but no, he was just some dumb regular kid. No special treatment.
And think about the trauma of like being in like high school and your mom is Connie Britton.
Oh yeah. Doesn't bear thinking about. But so like, basically like the end of the show is that like De Niro has unmasked the conspiracy led by Matthew Modine and his daughter. And Matthew Modine's like, all right, you got me dead to rights, but like, let's just like, look, the country's in a delicate place right now. Let's just end this with Gabby Hoffman. She's dead. We killed her in prison. She hung herself in the Manhattan Correctional Center. You know how it goes. And like, let's just leave it there because like the country can't handle much more heartbreak if they learn that like 5 Congress people did 9/11. But he's like, but don't forget, one of them is your daughter, and treason is a capital offense. So if you expose my role in this, you're just only going to be, fitting your daughter for a noose or whatever. And then like, and then at the end, like you're like, oh, what is this honorable man to do? And they fix this because like he's supposed to address a joint session of Congress. And he's got like the doctored report that like, shades the truth for public consumption. But then he has some other sort of like Havana syndrome moment. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to read a letter from my daughter. And she's like, I have already killed myself. No, she's like, no, I'm going to take responsibility for this. But it's never like, I was hoping that the end of the movie would be like him watching his daughter get a lethal injection and then just nodding and being like, the Constitution is safe.
I would have at least like admired the movie for that if they went like just full sociopathy and they were like, he has no more kids left. His illegitimate son doesn't count because make it so it's like the tragedy is both his kids die and then his illegitimate son is ruined by watching fake news. So it's like he has no kids. But then he oversees the execution of his daughter because the news is so important to him. That would have at least like been admirable, but they never show any. It's just like, here's her letter where she feels bad about it. And it's like, okay, is she going to prison? Is she normally I am against like everything has to be wrapped up. I think that's David Chase's right. That's a disease of the American mind in contemporary entertainment. But with something as shitty as this, it's like, can you just fucking tell me?
They don't even wrap up the Proteus plot line. Like they find some wires in his bird feeder and they're like, could be, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe he has Proteus.
And then like the last shot of the show is just him like walking his dog or something. It's so fucking boring. But there's just one. Sorry, I just remembered one moment from this show that I really want to return to, and it's about the him and the Tucker Carlson character, because like I mentioned before that like the political content of this like evil right wing news broadcast is like President Nick Mullen is old, he's weak and afraid, and I'm sure he's much too afraid to come arrest me. You heard me, Mullen, you weak old man, come arrest me. And De Niro watches this and he's like, bet. And they like send a SWAT team to his house, black bag him, take him out in the middle of the night and send him to like some rendition site. And then like he's on the ground, he's like curled up and like sweating and afraid because, you know, I mean, like, because he's a pussy, right? I mean, who would be afraid in a situation like that? And then De Niro comes in, kneels down and looks at it. No, because like on the broadcast, Dan Stevens is like, more than anything, President Mullen, you're an idiot. And then like after he's been renditioned to a CIA black site, President Mullen walks in his cell, kneels down, looks at him and goes, who's the idiot now? And I'm just like, this guy's a monster. This is like, and this is what I mean about like this show is the future of cable news, which is like, was not news to begin with. It's a TV show for people who are going, losing their mind. But like, they should just lean into that and just like, as I said earlier, create a scripted show with like actors portraying politicians and have them say and do the things that you want to see happen. But I like as a narrative construct, this show is like the perfect manifestation, not just of liberals or Democrats, but of every American. The fantasy is, what do we want more than anything else? The ability to abduct, torture, and kill anyone we see on the internet or TV who annoys us. And the show delivers on that regard.
Yeah, I mean, in how naked it is, I do appreciate that. I would have found it more detestable if there was like a big scene where he's like, I'm sorry for assaulting you, Tucker. I'm kind of glad.
No, he never apologizes for it.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad that it's at least spiteful enough.
Yeah.
That way.
They're like, yeah, like you arrested like a public figure for insulting you on TV and like literally tortured him. They show him being tortured on this show. And like, they're like, well, you know, it's where the investigation led. And it was like, and they arrested him because of deep faked photos. That was the evidence. They were like, he's connected to the plot. He's connected to the plot. We look at these photos and they're like, and then at one point, like, the guy is like, these are the best deep fakes we've ever seen. Oops,
that's enough to
sorry about that.
Them.
And once again, I mentioned it earlier, but the scene where the Tucker character is racist to the guy who's torturing him is so funny to me because they're like, this is like the writer of the show being like, in case you had any doubts before, this guy is really evil. And it's like, he's the one who's been falsely arrested and is being tortured by the government. Are you fucking crazy? I mean, like, come on, like, compared to that, yeah, his racist beliefs are a rather not a venal sin, or a venal sin, not a mortal one. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, we're making fun of it because it all is risible, but I much prefer, you know, any version of this is dog shit and unwatchable, but I prefer the spiteful version.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to make something this fucking authoritarian and crazy and just stupid bullshit, like, at least, you know, keep it pure. I don't want any, you know, that West Wing shit where it's like, you're a Republican, but you're not a son of a bitch. I could have a drink with you. No, you should put shit in the assholes of your enemies.
On tonight's Jeff Newsroom broadcast, I will be apologizing for the rape and murder of Bill O'Reilly. This one's on me, folks. I got it wrong.
Hey, sometimes you step in it. Even I can be wrong.
All right, that's about all the thoughts I have on Zero Day. An extraordinary TV miniseries. Like I said, I think provides probably the largest exit from reality yet. That liberals and cable news watchers will be offered in the coming years.
Definitely, like this, there's stealth advertising. You're like, yeah, the or Morbius or whatever, the melting brains, you know, confused, you trip the hall, the fantasy, you can't get out. Sounds pretty good, huh? Well, order now.
Yeah. No, this is what no one wants to watch the news, especially if you're a liberal. It's all fucking awful and depressing. Like it's all just evil. Yeah, that's lame.
Just blow your brains out.
Oh, I also need to shout out that the Proteus trigger is
it's a gun.
Reason, it's an De Niro hears audio of the most whack of many whack Sex Pistols tracks that he then becomes obsessed with.
Who killed Bambi?
Yeah.
Who killed Bambi?
Oh,
And God, I have to explain this. Throughout the show, De Niro, he's like, back in my law school days, I learned to write everything down in these Moleskine notebooks. And like very quickly, it just becomes the diary of a madman as his mind loses, like his ability to discern reality. And then like flipping through the pages, it's like all work, no play makes Jack a dull boy, except he keeps writing over and over again, who killed Bambi? Who killed Bambi? Who killed Bambi? And I'm like, gee, I wonder where this is going. And I could not have anticipated it was the song playing in his son's drug shack when he overdosed. The worst Sex Pistols song of all time.
Time to do a little heroin and throw on the soundtrack to the great rock and roll swindle.
Because like the writers of the show is like, what would a fucked up junkie listen to? A punk song about killing Bambi.
They're like, that's your heroin song. That was clearly the son's first time doing heroin.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah, sweet Jesus, please.
Yeah. Like holy shit. No wonder he died. He didn't even die from the heroin. Just no one's ever listened to that song doing it before.
All right, should we wrap it up there?
Yeah.
That was 0 day.
Who are you people? What? Huh?
Everyone out there, be careful about Proteus. It's okay to have a bereavement baby if you're a man. And watch out for your daughter, most of all, if you're a good man.
Worst. Felix, I was thinking about the eternal war between mothers and daughters. And I was kind of surprised the Joan Allen character wasn't like, we should kill our daughter for betraying the country.
That, like, if I wrote this movie, first of all, it would, like, the plot is actually just another battle in the war between mothers and daughters. Like, the smoke screen is that it's Centris Gladio, but actually it's an op by mothers against daughters.
She was the mom was the one responsible for all of it by coercing her daughter into starting this evil false flag terror attack conspiracy.
And then it turns out everything what like 9/11 was, their son dying. It's all been like, it's like the Metal Gear Saga.
The Mother Gear Saga. Liquid and Solid Wife.
Mother Box? What?
I want to clarify. I don't think this is all mothers and daughters, and I don't think all mothers and daughters are enemies. I've just known a lot of women who are like, yeah, there was a Supreme Court case because me and my mom poisoned each other when I was 9. Maybe it's just a lot of the ones that I know romantically.
All right, well, that does it for today's show. If you're in New York City, I would like to make a plea with you again to come see EFIS this weekend at Lincoln Center or IFC. Several showtimes this weekend. I will be moderating a Q&A Saturday at both the IFC Center and Lincoln Center. So if you see either of those shows on Saturday, you will see a question and a Q&A after, moderated by myself, featuring Carlson Lund and one of the stars of this picture, the guy from Uncut Gems.
You moderating both on the same night?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, one's at 2:00, the other's at 6. Yeah.
All right. Go see EFIS. All the showtimes linked in the description.
Take me out to the movies. All right. Cheers, everybody.